And we are live. Welcome to the Deal Champs podcast. Dean forgot to put on his outfit today. Me and Jason are synced up and matching. Dean wants to wear brown instead of having the shirt with the black sweats and the slides.
I wasn't on that side text.
Bro, you weren't on the side text. Shout out Simply though. Shout out Shanae.
Oh yeah.
Sherrod.
All the giggling when we first started the podcast makes sense now. You know, your little giggles.
Welcome to the Deal Champs pod, guys. We have an awesome guest on today, a dude who I really respect. I've seen his growth. Brock, I think we've known each other since we were kids.
Yeah.
And so this will be a cool episode. And what means the most to me, so Brock always had the most grit. And Brock, I'm not trying to be mean, but you were the smallest guy on the team, but you never fucking gave up when we played football and you were trying to throw your face into everything. So it wasn't surprising when you started to do all this stuff like the Neuromastery, because it took a lot of just mental fortitude to continue to doing what you're doing. And you never once dropped energy levels whenever I saw you like any of those situations. So I had a lot of respect for you from that. And it shows, like, I'm not surprised that you made it to doing what you're doing.
You know, it's funny you bring that up. When you reached out to me, I looked at the DM and I was like, Strat wants me on this podcast. And I was like, I think the last time me and Strat actually saw each other, we were playing football. You and BJ Newman were out on the field. And they yell on the sideline. They're like, Brock, we need a corner. And I was a sophomore. Strat was a senior. And I go running out there. And I'm like the least qualified person to be on that field at that time. And BJ and Strat just look at each other and they say, Brock, get the F off the field. And I was like, okay. You know, I just went running off. And I was like, geez, at that point, like, here I am, fourth string corner, not really doing anything meaningful. And now, you know, I've been able to do a little bit more. I wouldn't say I'm much more athletic. I just am too stubborn to quit, but
I love it, bro. And Brock was 3 years younger than us. We'll do some quick intros. My name is Stratton Brown. I've scaled 2 different companies to 7 figures. Right now we're doing the 0 to $1 million in wholesale. We have a 7-figure real estate portfolio. And our goal is always to show you guys how to be a better business owner, share all these lessons that we've learned. Brock is going to go over the mental side, and we talk about the mental side a lot as far as, like, I'd say it's 80% mental, and being too dumb to quit, like Brock said, is
That's
one
good.
of the biggest aspects of entrepreneurship. We have the other matchy twin, the master of hair, Mr. Jason Pritchard, down there with the shirt.
Shout out to Simply. Great partner of ours. What's up, guys? It's your other co-host, Jason Pritchard. Quick backstory on me. I worked for 15 years in corporate America, was unhappy with my job, unhappy with my life. We burned all the boats, like Tony Robbins says, in 2014 and have not looked back since. Since then, we've been investing in real estate full time. We've done 500 deals. We own a real estate portfolio just north of $17 million. And I'm actually really excited for this topic because I say that people come to these pods, they come to us, they ask for help, and they think the thing that they're missing is the tactical side of the real estate, the how-to, the nuts and bolts. What list do I pull, and what do I say to the sellers, and blah, 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 blah. And what they really ultimately need is to learn how to screw their head on straight. And I spend more time working on that than I do actually like underwriting deals. And that's one of the things that I think has given me consistent success for 10 plus years. So this should be a really good topic. We haven't had somebody come on and just focus on this in a long time. So I'm excited for this one, Brock. It should be a good one, dude.
I love it. And then we have Mr. Captain America, Mr. No Match. I mean, bro, it looks like you're against the crew today. Like, I don't know what the fuck's wrong with you. You're against the crew.
I'm the OG Resimply guy too. I mean,
you are the OG Resimply.
It's been 4 years strong when it was a couple sticks put together.
Yeah. Mr. Captain America, please do an intro.
What's up, guys? Your other co-host, Dean Rogers here. Really excited for having Brock here today. Performance athlete, right in tune with how I got my career started in the NFL. And then I turned to corporate, then got into real estate, been investing in real estate for a decade now in Central California, over 700 plus deals, 8-figure rental portfolio, and coaching students how to get started in real estate with wholesaling. And you guys can always connect with me at deanrogers.com.
And then we have the master of mental, Mr. Brock Painter. Again, man does not quit. And like that story you told, Brock was always the one who was like, hey, someone needs to get in. And if you guys played sports, you know what to talk about. Like, hey, someone went down. Someone needs to run in. Brock Painter could not be denied. and he was trying to get in no matter what was going on, which is awesome. But Brock, give us a quick intro about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Brock Painter. Sounds like I'm in a room of champions, man. I'm listening to all those intros, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. Get to learn from the best today. And so I run a company called Neuromastery. It's a mind and body performance program where we help men become the best and highest versions of themselves. So we do that through the 4 pillars of a healthy person: your physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental. So I help build workout programs, nutrition plans. We have a community where we get together every month, take on different challenges. I help guys train for races, and yeah, it's pretty fun. And then I do some one-on-one coaching to help with the mindset side of things.
Why did you ever want to run an ultramarathon? Number one, I feel like that's the number one question I always ask people like you.
Honestly, I was kind of thrust into it. It wasn't something I necessarily expected. It kind of came from when I was younger. For Strat, who knows me, I have 4 older brothers, being the youngest of 5. My whole goal in life was to be able to keep up with them. And that meant if they hit hard in football, I was going to hit hard in football. Even if that meant hurting myself, I was going to do it at all costs. And if they hit a big jump on a dirt bike, I was going to do it too. And that led me through a lot of my life, always just trying to keep up and follow other people's path. And that also took away a lot of my confidence in myself and understanding that I could handle problems. And that carried with me as I started Neuromastery. I jumped myself. And obviously, if you know the coaching world, it's basically like the flavor of the week. There's so many different coaches. And I thought I had something, I was God's gift to the world in the coaching industry, and that I was going to make a difference. And I was reminded really quickly that that wasn't the case. And that mentality that I had from a kid, I didn't realize was there, that I didn't feel like I was enough or I could handle my own problems. And so I started to get nervous in the industry because I was like, I had a family, I had a wife, and I needed to provide. And so I started reaching out to prominent coaches in the area to get help. And I got on with one who's a big dog here in Utah. And he basically looked at me and he said, Brock, quit what you're doing. He goes, you shouldn't be here. Come back in 10 years when you've done something meaningful. And, that just hit me in the heart. I was like, oh man, like, what do I do? Right. And so I do what I did best. And I went and I got on a bike and I started pedaling and was on there for almost 100 miles. And I just went deep with myself. And I knew there was something more because he was right. There was something I needed to learn from him in a way. Like I needed to learn, like I didn't have the credibility that I needed. And I also don't think he knew who was on the other side of that phone call. And so right after I signed up for my first 100-mile race, and I ran Canyonlands 100 in 2023. And then since then, it's just become a way for me to feel capable, to feel strong. And I also have created a belief system where, if I'm going to teach guys in my program, I got to be able to go places that they're unwilling to go, so I can give things that they don't have for themselves. And if I don't learn those lessons, then I can't give what I don't have. And so, continuously going to that place to where I can find new places on myself has made a huge difference. And so, I recently just finished up the Hurt 100, and, we can talk about that a little bit more, but that's the most recent one, which is one of the bigger ultra marathons in the world that has 24,000 feet, 500 feet of elevation over the span of 100 miles, which is basically climbing the feet of Everest. And, you learn a lot of lessons out there. So that's just basically in a nutshell what got me here.
I've got lots of questions, Brock, and this is probably going to jump a little bit all over the place once we get in our groove, but I'm just going to dive in, dude. So one of the things, I heard you mention this at the beginning of your introduction and as you were talking, one of the things I see lots of people that are new that want to make this transition as successful real estate investors, they have this desire, they have this want to do it. But you said a really important word, I think it was self-confidence. And I think a lot of them lack that self-confidence, right? They may have it and use it in other areas of their life, but when they come and try something new, they're really shaky, imposter syndrome, all of the little voice in your head starts to really get really loud. How do you overcome that? Or can you give the people that are listening, because we do get lots of newer investors that are on here that are in that period where they're struggling, they're trying to find that first deal, they can't get over the hump, and that voice is getting louder and louder and louder, telling them to go back to their jobs or go back to whatever it was before. How would you suggest that they start approaching the process of developing some of that belief and that confidence in themselves to overcome these initial hurdles?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I maybe have a different approach than most in this category. I believe that a lot of the problem is the expectation of confidence. I believe confidence is earned, and it only comes through stacking evidence and proving to yourself that you can do it. So it's like, for example, right? I get on loop 2 of the last, so it was 5 loops. Each of them were about 5,000 feet of elevation. Okay. Loop 1, I went out hot and I was sticking up with these pro runners and I was right there with them. Okay. But I had rolled my ankle 4 times and I basically had blown up my thighs from how steep the downhill was, that which I didn't prepare.
Yeah.
So I get on loop 2 and all those thoughts start coming up. I don't think I'm capable. I don't believe I'm enough. I don't think I can do this. Okay. Obviously, I wanted to drop out. I didn't think I was like, I may have bit off more than I could chew. I don't think I can finish this race. I didn't have confidence in that moment. Right. I talked myself through it and I was able to continue forward. But what that took is courage. So the lesson that I think would help those young entrepreneurs is confidence is comfortable, courage is not. And sometimes courage is all you have. And you just take that step, that next step. And as you continue to take courage, by the end of the race, I'm confident that I could go back to the Hurt 100 and do it again. But I didn't have that on loop 2. I had to have courage to get me through the race.
It's good. That's great. I love that.
Bro, I love it.
I guess the questions
go ahead.
about the actual ultra marathon itself. So you said it's 100 miles. How long does something like that actually take?
So it varies. The time cap on the race was 36 hours. I finished in 29, but each 100-mile race is a little bit different. This one in particular, with the higher elevation, is going to take you a little longer. So, yeah.
So is that just like an all-nighter and you're just pushing through it, or like are you taking breaks? What's the strategy on something like that?
So you take break, like you eat food, but it's not like you're sleeping. I don't take breaks longer than 10 minutes. Most aid stations, I would be there for 2. And so they had an aid station about every 5 to 7 miles throughout the course. And then one of those aid stations was where my crew was, where they would bring me like burritos and whole meals that you'd throw down as fast as you can. You really don't want to sit for too long, though, because if you do, the time adds up and then you could add hours onto your race very easily if you're not careful.
How hard is it to start back up again when you stop for those 2 minutes?
Oh my God.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
can you imagine running 30 hours and then all I would want to do is sit down? Oh God,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Honestly, for me, it's not as bad as like if it was on a marathon, I wouldn't be able to get back up. But on these ultras, it actually kind of helps rejuvenate me enough because you just kind of know what you're in. Like you set the expectation, it's going to be hard. Your body's going to ache, and you just kind of have that understanding that it is what it is. And so, you know, you're like, I would rather be out here for 29 hours than 36 hours. So I got to get moving. And so I have timers set before I even start the race. So I know how long I'll be at each aid station, regardless of how I feel.
So you had, and I love this thing that you said, you had this conversation with this prominent coach in Utah, and he basically told you just to quit and go do something and come back to me in 10 years. I love how you said this guy didn't know who he was talking to on the other end of the phone. And I love that you still have that mental receipt of that conversation. Strat and I were talking about this, I think, on the ride that we had up to Stockton. Dude, I have moments, I'm sure all of us here have had these moments where somebody doubted me somewhere along the way, and their intent maybe not even have been to doubt it, but that's how we perceived it at that time. And even now, like I can remember those things and it takes me right back to that place. And anytime I need to find like another gear because I just need to get my ass in, I can just remember those things and it immediately pushes my trigger. So my question is, do you feel, I go back and forth on this, it doesn't feel like the healthiest thing to constantly be driven by proving people wrong. But I also know that when I need to push my buttons and get a little burst of energy, I can go there very quickly and it gives me a lot of fuel to burn. So what are your thoughts on like constantly proving somebody wrong and using that as your drive to want to become more successful?
Yeah. I mean, I think about it a little bit different. Like it cut me, right? But my intention wasn't to prove him wrong. I believe, like, I reached out to him. I wanted his advice. I got it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And so he gave me his advice. And so part of that was that I believe that there's a lesson to be learned from him. I took the lesson because not everything he says, he didn't know me. He didn't know what I was trying to do, and he didn't know my past. So what I did was I extracted what was helpful and I eliminated the rest. Because some of that was helpful. I took the lesson, I learned it. And one lesson that I learned was that hard is only hard unless a lesson is learned. And so I didn't want it to just be hard. And if I continue doing the same things over and over and over again, I'm just going to end up in this never-ending cycle of misery. I prolong my pain because I'm too stubborn to listen.
Yeah.
I had to let my ego go and just say, okay, what can I learn from this? And then when I learned it, it said, okay, I need to build credibility. What could I do that would build the most credibility? Well, I could go get my PhD. That would help. Or I could go run 100 miles to go run till I hallucinate, pretty much. And it was like, all right, I picked the race. So
Dean, what type are you, bro? I'm more of like, you always need an enemy. Like Michael Jordan always had an enemy. Kobe Bryant always had an enemy. Tom Brady always had an enemy. And like that's someone who's going to drive you. And I have a list of mental receipts in my fucking brain.
Oh yeah.
Of people who I will burn to the ground eventually. Like of just like, oh no, this is there. You said that. Awesome. Like check. Like it goes back into the tote. And then I use it like Jason does. And then sometimes just you need that fire. To where other times it's what can I do? Like how far can I push myself to see what I can get going? I don't think I could run 100-miler with all anger though. It would have to be pulling on what can I do? I don't think there'd be enough anger in there to run 100 miles.
Yeah, and I think there's a balance to it. Because there, just like you're saying, like that anger, that can give you that short-term motivation. But will it get you from that 0 to the million? Probably not, right? It can help start you, but it's not going to help you finish. And that's where you need something deeper that's going to help you continue to drive.
With this, Brock, I just have written down attack mentality. Is that like the race? Is that your mentality during that entire race? Towards like, hey, I'm attacking the hours and I'm just working at it. Or are you trying to take it at a pace? And like, what pace are you jogging at? Is it a decent pace or are you actually like on your horse the whole time?
So first race, I was like that first one I did was on my horse a lot because it wasn't as much elevation. This one, I mean, you're driving, but you're going up pretty steep mountains. And so like there's balance to that too. I actually had a very powerful, profound lesson for myself. Maybe it'll help you guys, maybe not, but it was something that I thought was very valuable. So that first loop, I started off really hot and I was following the leaders. And honestly, I felt good. I felt strong, but I had rolled my ankle about 4 times in the first loop. I went out without my sticks, and so I basically was just pushing through. I went too fast on the downhill, and I started to make stupid mistakes. Like I got lost on the very first loop. And so all those things started to happen, and part of the problem was that I was running at someone else's pace. They were very smart and intelligent people, but I wasn't there. I didn't have the training. I don't have the abilities. I don't have the evidence stacked to be able to do that. And so what I did is I ended up putting myself in a bad situation because I wasn't ready to handle what they were doing. And so that second loop, when I had to have that heart to heart, it was at the end of the loop, but I had to slow way down and run my race. But what I noticed was a lot of those people who started off the gate hot, I passed most of them by the end of the race. I ended up winning my age group because I was able to stay consistent throughout the whole race. And I stopped trying to run at another person's pace. And I just said, hey, stick to your training, trust what you know, you'll be there at the end. And I ended up finishing really well.
So a couple things that I've heard you mention a couple times. And to me, this is easily one of the most important things for recipe for success is how you train, how you lead up to the event, right? Whether it's game time, whether it's an event, whether it's you performing in the moment of whatever it is you're doing. Talk to me about the training leading up to this, because I know hearing from other people who have been in marathons and just, high performing athletes, like the training is almost everything, right? So talk to me, like, what did your training regimen look like? How did you learn the right way to train? And, what were your biggest lessons and takeaways as you went through the training?
Yeah, it's great. Great question, because honestly, that's where all the lessons are learned. The race day is just the celebration of all the hard work you put in.
Yeah.
And so, the training plan, my mentality when creating a training program is I want it to be so bulletproof that it would be unreasonable for me to not hit my goal. Like, I'm not trying to grocery shop and think, well, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll pick this, but not that. I'll do what it takes, regardless of how I feel, regardless of what I think is going to make me feel better. It's just, at the end of the day, I believe that when it comes to training, choice is an illusion. It takes what it takes. And so it's my job just to form myself to do what it takes to be able to get the goal. If I really want the goal, I follow the plan, right? As far as learning how to train and do it effectively, that's just come from trial and error. I've ran a lot of long distance races, and I've ended some very injured. Like my first race, I ended with my shins bruised from the inside out, looking like I'm 9 months pregnant, swollen feet all the way down. And it took me about a month to recover. This one, I'm a week off the race, and I've already ran 7 miles yesterday and 3 today. And, but it's because of that trial and error and putting miles in. Another thing that made a huge difference is I have a coach, not necessarily in the ultra world, but I had a coach for my Ironman training that I did in October. And when I was doing that, like they shortcut all my problems because there's so many things that I just don't know. And if they already have the experience on it, then I can just trust in them. And then I don't have to make as many decisions. Like, a lot of times when you're training yourself, you sit there and a lot of it comes down to emotion and how you feel that day. And you're like, I'm going to listen to my body. But sometimes your body's going to say you're tired when you have a lot more in the tank. And that's where a coach comes into play because they know what it takes to get there so they can shortcut that path. And so I had to trust a lot in that process. And then when it came to getting to this 100, it was just like, yeah, it's just plug and play. I show up each day, I run the miles, I do what it takes, and inevitably I'll finish the race. And that's what happened.
I think that's huge on the coach part, bro. We talk about this all the time of like having someone who can help you and tell you all the mistakes you shouldn't make, of having some mentor of some kind. And we all talk about how much we invest into ourselves because it's all the decisions that you didn't make that it saves you on. Yeah, you may have only said 5 things, but you tried to do 5 of these other things. You said, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just do this. You'll be fine.
Yeah, huge. And honestly, they can tell you when to put the gas pedal down and when to pull back because it's hard to know that because your emotions, that's something I study a lot in my program, are an unreliable source of information. The way I define an emotion is your body's interpretation of the present based on past experiences. So if you want to continually repeat the past, listen to your emotions, right? If you want to create new outcomes, you got to do new things, which just means you're going to feel a little bit awkward. You're going to feel like it doesn't fit. It's not going to be you because you're not that person yet. And so you have to allow that evolution to take place.
My man's preaching.
Why do you think so many people struggle with that? Because that's where there's some people, probably like all of us on this call, on this pod, where it's like, here's the game plan. Let's just do it. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. But I think the vast majority of people languish in that little area that you said right now, where it's going to feel awkward. It's not going to feel comfortable. And then they can't break through. You have any tips or advice for people that want to do some of these amazing things or even set new goals and create new outcomes in their life and then, struggle getting through that? What would you suggest to them, Brock?
The biggest thing that I would suggest that I had to go through myself, allow yourself to win. Like, give yourself permission to win and don't try to grocery shop success. There's certain laws that bind the earth. There's laws of wealth. There's laws of a 100-mile race. And I believe that if one can do it, we all can. And if I can run a 100-mile race, any of you guys on this call could, if you're willing to do what it takes to get there, right? That just may not be your goal, but if you wanted to, you could. If you followed my training program, I bet you I could get you to run 100 miles if you followed it, right? And it's the same thing with you guys. If someone followed, if you really genuinely created those results, it's plug and play because there's certain laws that create those outcomes. So if I'm talking to the person who's struggling there, you must make a choice to take a chance on you. Otherwise, nothing will ever change. And so you have to take that chance on yourself and say, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to allow myself to win. And I'm going to remove any of the guilt and shame around winning. I'm here to have the best outcome I possibly can and create a life that I absolutely love and that I'm absolutely like, I'm the person I respect and I care about. And I love myself so much that I'm going to allow myself to win regardless of how I feel, right? Because you're going to start to create those outcomes. And I'm not saying that emotions are irrelevant. Like, they matter, but they're just not good indicators of action, if that makes sense.
It does. Allow myself to win is huge, dude. And I think
Yeah,
most people, whether they realize it or not, they are bringing in some past trauma or some limiting beliefs that cause them to self-sacrifice or to self-sabotage. And a lot of it is surrounded. They don't feel worthy, that they set these lofty goals, but there's something in them that is stopping them from getting there. And you have to reprogram those limiting beliefs. You have to do the work to go in and start not only mentally reprogramming it, but all this action that you're talking about, execute on it and having the courage to do that. And then the confidence comes and then things start to snowball. My IG is going crazy. Your homegirl said, who is this dude? He's fire as fuck. So we need to get Brock's IG on here, Strat. I don't know where his name's at, but
Brock, where is it? What is your IG?
It's Brock Painter Official.
Brock Painter Official, Sarah. That's Brock. If you guys want to follow him, everybody's giving you lots of props, dude. In my live Instagram stream, dude, you're going off.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and you know, a lot of it is just, it's self-love. Like, I believe self-discipline is the definition of self-love. Like, for example, when I wanted to quit on loop 2, like, my self-talk is, I don't negotiate with terrorists. If you do not have my best interest, I'm not going to listen to you. And that includes my own mind. If you're not going to help me become the person that I want to, then you do not belong here. And it's not that I'm rejecting or trying to say, hey, that part of me doesn't exist. It's like, it's there, but I'm not listening. Or, you know, if it's like, I want to stay up late the night before, but I know I have an early morning because I got a lot of work to do the next day. I love myself too much to let me do that. I love myself too much to eat food that doesn't have my best interest. And I think all of that is a part of the equation of just, you know, I love myself so much. I want me to be as successful as I possibly can. And that's where I'm going to be able to make the greatest impact to not only myself, my family, and everyone around me. Like I said, I can't give what I don't have. I cannot give something to my family if it's not there. Right. And so that's made a huge difference for me.
But I love nobody really understands, and they don't dive into it before entrepreneurship, the way those words you say to yourself and the way you phrase it. I love myself, even though it sounds woo-woo. And Jason, we were talking about these fucking talk tracks on the way back from Stockton, is way different than saying I like myself or whatever you want to say, like I hate myself because of X. If you say it this way, you are going to get a completely different outcome and you're going to feel better. You're going to vibrate differently. Joe, I am 100% Joe Dispenza, Bob Proctor on this, because you will drive out all those previous emotions and bring all these new ones in.
You know what's crazy? When you really invest time into telling yourself a story, because you get to choose. You get to choose whatever story you decide to tell yourself. It's 100% a conscious choice, right? So as soon as you focus on telling yourself a story that uplifts you and gets you closer to the thing that you want to see, it becomes very obvious when people are very negative in your life. And I see it, and it's almost like a energy drain as soon as I'm around a friend or a family member or somebody that's in the real estate business where they're negative or they have a victim mentality. And it's just like, I don't want to be around any of that stuff, man. And I think you said it, dude, like the words that you speak over yourself are very, very powerful. Most people don't realize that they're constantly affirming negative things and talking negative things over themselves. And here's what I would suggest if you're struggling with this problem. You know how much it costs you to try to tell yourself a different story? Literally nothing. Costs you zero. You know, so if you're not getting the outcomes that you want in your life right now, why don't you just try it? Because you're not getting what you want anyways. And this isn't going to cost you anything but a little bit of time to just shift the talk track that is constantly going through a loop. And most people are just on autopilot they don't even realize what they're telling themselves.
Exactly.
So yeah, it doesn't cost anything but just to try.
Brock, what do you see are the things that are preventing people from the self-love and from actually believing in themselves? What are the top things that are holding people back?
Yeah. So I love the brain, and I love learning about the brain. And part of the people misunderstand the brain a little bit, because a lot of them think that it cares about your goals, that it cares about your well-being and how successful you are. It doesn't. it cares about two things: familiarity and safety. Okay. And that's what it's wiring in. And so where you have that negative self-talk, obviously that's the stuff that's going to cause you harm. So you're going to pay more attention to it. And then familiarity, the more you reiterate and the more you validate that, obviously that's going to become more and more wired in and hardwired into who you are. And so here's another thing that's important to understand about the mind and the body is that if your body will know if you're lying to it, but it's not based on what's right or wrong, good or bad. It's not based on those labels. It's based on what's familiar. So if you're sitting there telling yourself all of these self-affirmations and your body rejects it, then it's not going to stick. It's just going to say you're lying to me. It's reject, just eliminate, right? Like our brain has millions of thoughts a day and it really only pays attention to about a couple hundred. Like, what are those filters? How did they get put in place to what to keep and what to reject, right? It's based on familiarity and safety. And so, naturally we're prone to go to that route. And so changing it can be difficult. It takes conscious and intentional effort consistently to do it. But the more you do it, the more you realize how much freedom is on the other side and abundance and love and how much opportunity there is, because it's the same thing with love, right? Like I remember when I was younger, I had a lot of opportunities presented to me, a lot of great advice, a lot of people that could have solved every single one of my problems. But I wasn't ready to listen to what they had to say. So it went over my head because I didn't have it to be able to receive it. Until I knew self-love, I couldn't fully receive love. And once I had self-love, then when I got the love from other people, it meant so much more because it actually stuck. Does that make sense? And so that's where that conscious and intentional effort really makes the difference. But it does take that daily practice of changing your familiar.
The daily practice, I think, is the hardest thing. And
yeah,
this Joe Dispenza quote is my favorite. Is you are upset all the time because it's the emotion you are most familiar with. Right? Like you feel this way all the time because it's what you are used to and what you love being in. Why don't you change that? I mean, and it takes time. And that's why I'm so worried about like how I project onto my kids. And so like shame is the lowest like vibration ever. Right. And so you don't want to have a bunch of shame on them. You want to be comfortable winning. Right. If you're just comfortable winning and that's what you do, then you attract more winning and you just feel better. You vibrate better. And it's so hard to get out of the loop, especially if you're in a rut and you haven't identified it and you're wondering why is everything not going the way I want it to. It's because you keep telling yourself it doesn't go the way I want it to. And you aren't trying. It's so much. Tony Robbins, what would you say? Tony Robbins, Joe Dispenza, Bob Proctor have been like the three biggest levers I've been able to pull in my life to help rewire my brain.
And you know what's crazy is it's like you think about the Tony Robbins of the world and you automatically go to the big self-improvement people. But if you really pay attention to almost any successful person in any industry,
100%.
any business, any athlete, they're going to tell you some variation of this, of what we're talking about right now. And for whatever reason, that really clicked with me, because when I wasn't getting the outcomes that I wanted in my life, I was like, well, shit, everybody that I want to be like, that I want, or it's all basically saying some variation of the same thing. Maybe I should just apply their thought process to my life instead of trying to force the same thought process over and over and over and being upset with not getting the things that I want, dude. And that's ultimately it. I don't know exactly why it works that way. I just know that's how it works, dude. And nobody knows how an airplane flies or how this phone is working, but we use it every day. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like you can just subscribe to the thought process of doing the thing that works and seeing what happens, man. I want to ask you I want to ask you another question. So I love what you said about the familiarity, and we need to create the familiarity, and that's a daily practice and a habit. Are there tangible things that you can suggest as a coach that people can start implementing in their life to start making this newer, higher, better version of themselves something that's more familiar, that resonates with them?
Yeah, no, that's great. So typically in my program, we have 3 phases. Okay. It's awareness, habit building. Okay. And then we have the becoming. Everybody likes to stick in these 2. They start with the habits. They start with adding more and more and more onto their life. I don't believe that you start there. Okay. So one quote that I love is we often compensate our own disbelief with hard work. we often try to sit there and we work hard and we add more and more and more into our life,
Work is the
focusing on
limiting
goals,
belief. Yeah.
focusing on this, and that all that is trying to compensate our own disbelief. And what we do is we stress ourselves out, we stress our family out, and we stress everyone else out around us, because there's only so many hours in a day. Like if you look at Elon Musk, like he's not working that many times harder than us. He's just more effective and more intentional with the time that he's putting in. Okay, so where I'd start the most in the beginning is you got to create a foundation. You got to get the ego out of the way and have an honest conversation of where you're struggling. Where I like to start is I create a garbage list of everything in my life that I believe to be nonsense and a distraction that take me away from what I really want, right? Like I said, I don't negotiate with terrorists. Like I said on my run, the only way I knew that that was a terrorist and he didn't have my best interest is because I'm real familiar with that voice. And I know that it doesn't belong, right? It doesn't mean it goes away. It just means that I don't have to listen. And so I start there. And I start creating a garbage list of everything that I don't feel like belongs in my life. And I start to chip away at those. Okay. And so you start to bring awareness to that internal world. You start to bring awareness to behaviors, thought patterns, things like that. Then step 2, okay, is I start to build the habits. I start to build myself out. What is going to lead me to the most success? And a lot of times we try to do all these indirect things that we believe are going to create success. Doing the thing creates the thing, nothing else. Like an ice bath is going to help you learn to calm your nervous system. It's going to help you stay healthy and have some energy. It's not going to build you $1 million business, right? Running a 100-mile ultramarathon isn't going to, make you a millionaire. You got to do the thing to get the thing, right? Luckily, in my case, I get to run ultramarathons, and that's a part of who I get to be, and that's my goal. So that's where I systematically put a lot of my effort in building my business, because that helps me with the knowledge and abilities to help my guys. But doing the thing, so habits, very directed and focused effort, eliminating anything else that doesn't belong. So once you realize what doesn't belong, you eliminate it, and then you choose what does belong, and you put all your efforts there. Because a focused fool will beat a distracted genius every time. That's the biggest thing that I've learned is, like, if I can focus on one thing, I can beat anyone, even if I suck at it. There's way better people at what I do than me, but I just showed up more times than them. So, they can't catch me at this point.
Everyone listening knows that's true, because you know somebody in the real estate business where you're like, how the hell did this person do this? You know what I'm saying? That's living proof. And we all know people that are like, dude, like, if this person can do it, I know for sure I can do it, right? Say the quote again one more time, Brock. What was it again? A focused fool?
A focused fool will beat a distracted genius every time.
100% of the time. That's right.
Okay. And then number 3 is becoming.
Dino, you're muted.
Oh.
No wonder. I use those examples all the time, Brock, because there are people that are really smart that just keep getting in their own way, and they keep asking, what's the thing I need to do? And I tell them, you just got to stop getting in your own way. There's too many examples of people that are not smart, uneducated, however you want to label them, but they are just so focused on the outcome that they figure out how to get it done. And it's the thing that creates the thing. Just like you said, they're working on the thing to get the result that they want and nothing else. Maybe they're too dumb to realize that there's other distractions that they could have, and that's how they get the results they're looking for. So I love that quote.
Yeah. And then number 3, the last tangible thing that I focus on is the becoming. That's where I allow myself to indulge in life, and I allow myself to win. I start to take on challenges that will stretch me, that will create me into someone new, that are things that, like, when I create a challenge for myself, I'm like, what's the coolest possible thing that I could think of that I could do? And then I just start to create a plan of building that, right? And I try to eliminate all the restrictions and things of society that says, it's too much, it's not realistic or whatever. And I just say, what's the coolest thing? And I start building it. Sometimes it takes more time than I like to think, but I always end up there eventually. And the thing is like, I would rather fail at the level of my future self than to succeed at the level of my current self. And so as I sit there and I make these goals, I love the process, because I'm always better off than if I didn't at all. And so that's where you start to take on challenges and start to create someone that I absolutely respect and be the person I'm proud of.
Brock, bro, do you ever fall off the train And if so, how do you get back on? Because I feel like a lot of people, like, they get there and you're starting to get it rolling and then you fall off, and it is so hard to get back on. So, like, what is your advice for people like that? To where I'd say there's a lot of start and stop people in entrepreneurship space where you have a ton of setbacks, and maybe you do hit up that routine, you start changing yourself, then you fall off it. So what is your advice for those people?
Yeah, I set forcing functions in my life to where when I do fall off, I'm not just accountable to myself. Like, I have a group that I'm a part of that are called my empathetic witnesses. They know everything about me. They know my finances. They know my goals. They know what I want. And if I'm not following through on that, they're very aware and let me know really quick. And we're all open and honest and very brutal. So I have some forcing functions there. Another thing that I like to do is I also pre-make as many decisions as I possibly can. Because decision fatigue is a real thing. The more decisions you have to make, the more likely you are to make a bad decision. And so I pre-make as many as I possibly can, so that way I can just turn my brain off and all I have to do is plug and play, right? If I show up, I do this, inevitably I will get the goal. So I have all that decision made well before I'm in the moment.
I think that I do so much better when I plan my days. Like, when I sit the night before, I plan it out, because if I don't plan the day takes over and then everything's fucking scattered. I don't get done what I need to get done or what I wanted to get done. To where if I plan my day the day before, I'm like, okay, especially when it comes to waking up and I know exactly what needs to be executed on, I will have a completely different day rather than like I just wake up. 100%. If I wake up, I'm like, okay, bro, like we got like these 5 things that like really need to be hashed out today. We need to go blow these things out of the water. You wake up with so much more intention. And I feel like a lot of people don't live intentionally. And it took me a while to even identify that I was kind of being aimless when you talk about like outwitting the devil and drifting. Yeah. Waking up intentionally is a massive, massive game changer when it comes to stuff like that too.
100%. And, especially in a space of real estate, like I remember my first day of college, I woke up out of bed and like, I was just like, nobody cares about me. Like, nobody cares if I go to class. Nobody cares if I just sit at home all day in my bed. And there's no repercussion except for the fact that I don't succeed. And so like in real estate, nobody cares. Nobody's over the top of you telling you what you need to do and how you need to do it. And so if you don't tell the world who you are, they're going to tell you for you. And so like part of that intentionality is just saying, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. And this is the best plan I have to do it.
This stuff for everybody that's tuned in, and we've got a lot of people on my stream that are, the chat's still going off, dude. So you're dropping some bombs, man. Everybody's resonating with everything that you're saying. What's really interesting is all the things that you're talking about doing are all available for free to have. Doesn't cost anybody money. Very simple framework to follow. And they're very easy to do. And they're also very easy not to do. And most people, at least my experience, want to make things more complicated than what they actually are. And they can't reconcile that it's just waking up and planning my day out and like just clearing out all the obstacles and being intentional. It's got to be something more complicated than that. And everything that you're talking about reminds me of a book that's called The Success System That Never Fails. It's like an old Napoleon Hill style book. And they talk about every chapter. They call them small hinges that swing big doors. And that's what I would call this. It's these little simple things that make big doors open up in your life. And if you guys are struggling with this, stop overcomplicating it, because it's not that simple. People want to know all the time, like, dude, how do you do all the things that you do? It's because like I'm meticulous with my time. I manage my day every single day. I delegate the things that I don't want to do. And I'm very intentional about the things that are important. And when you do that and stack those wins over and over and over and over again for 10 years straight, you'll get to some amazing outcomes in your life, man. So everything that you're talking about resonates deeply with me, dude. It's fire, bro.
Yeah. And just
Brock, remind us about your IG. I got more people asking, what's the IG?
It's Brock Painter Official.
Okay.
But just a simple way to say what you're saying is, the better you get at saying no, the deeper you're able to go with your yeses.
I love it.
100%.
Unpack that again. Say it again. Say that one again, because that was another one that I think is going to fly over everybody's head. And why is that important? Why is learning to say no to a lot of these things important?
Yeah, the better you get at saying no, the deeper you're able to go with your yeses. And the reason that's important is because every time you say yes, you're taking time and attention away from what matters most. unless it is what matters most. And so if it's not the thing, it needs to be eliminated. And elimination is much more powerful than addition. Like a lot of times we focus so much on more things, more stuff, more time, more everything, and that's not always the answer. Intentionality, focus towards one thing will make the biggest outcome over time. And that's why, if you get good at saying no, you're able to go a lot deeper with your yeses.
I'm pumped. I'm ready to run.
You only need one yes.
Right now.
I'm
ready.
And Brock, how much caffeine did you drink, bro? Sorry, Dino.
Very good.
I drank 500 milligrams, 2 in the beginning and then 3 in the night.
That's all?
This was actually my first race ever on caffeine. I'd never done it before. My first race, Hunter, I did without any pain pills or caffeine. I'd kind of dry dogged it, but this last one, I decided some caffeine would do me good.
What was harder, the triathlon or the ultra? Which one was harder?
Oh,
the 100-mile.
100 for sure.
Really?
I love triathlons. They're pretty fun, but because you're using so many different muscles. Like I remember doing my run. I only really struggled on the triathlon the last 8 of the marathon. This one you're in the pain cave for 15 hours.
Oh my God.
Pain cave.
So
the pain cave, just you and you, bro, fucking getting after it for 15 hours.
It's so funny. There's the biggest hill on the course, and there's just a little sign that says, "Pain is temporary, quitting lasts forever." And you're just like, okay, I got this. Keep pushing.
So I'm familiar with the pain cave for sure. Lots of training in my life. For a marathon specifically, and more specifically an ultramarathon, like that's different, right? You're just in the zone. What specifically did you speak to yourself to get through that? Was it a song you would sing or music you would listen to? Or did you even have headphones? Like, what did you do to get through that process?
Yeah. Well, before the race, I created a why. I started to write down the things that mean the most to me and why I'm out there. One of those things is I want to be able to be there when no one else can. I have a group of guys that I coach, and I got to be able to be there when they can't be there for themselves, which means I got to be willing to go places that they're not willing to go. So that way I can teach them the lessons. And so that was one of my biggest whys, was I want to be able to have that opportunity to be able to give to them when they can't. Number 2, I believe that if I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put all this time and effort into my races, I better come back with a story to tell. Just like back in the day when the hunters would go out to get the buffalo, they better come back with a story to tell the family and some meat. And so that's a big thing for me, is like, I want to be able to create that reality for my son. I want to have lessons that I can teach him of how he can rise up and face the mountains in his life. And so those were big motivations for me. And then also, the last one is a Conor McGregor quote where he says, "Your lack of discipline." I was thinking of it just today. It's, your lack of discipline is almost a slap in the face to those who believe in you. And so I wanted to prove those who believe in me right. And that was a big motivation, because I have a wife who sacrificed a lot for me. I have a family who's been there for me. I have people who flew out to Hawaii just to support. And I had countless people watching on Instagram me finish this race. If I don't finish, like, what message am I saying to the world of who I am? And so, I just wanted to be able to prove those who believe in me right.
Love that.
I love that, because, you think of the Michael Jordans of the world. I just watched Last Dance again. And I think a lot of people will look at people in success and just think that they're just that much better. They're that much more qualified. They're that much more gifted. They're that much smarter, right? Some of the points we've already made. And, you look at the guy's work ethic, and it was just second to none. He was just relentless with his training and pushing himself to those new levels, and put himself in those positions consistently to win, so that winning was familiar for him, right? So as you go through these new experiences, how did you create that familiarity for yourself? How did you create those comforts to be able to push through? Because, if I'm thinking of my own pain caves, it's not that I was just better or more in shape. It was just, I was too dumb to quit. Like you said at the beginning, right? Too stubborn to quit is what you said. That's a big part of it, but I had to continue to speak and believe in myself to finish it too. So walk me through, how you got through that as well.
Yeah, a lot of it is just, understanding that it's much bigger than me. I'm a part of something much bigger than myself. And how big that is, I don't know. But I do know there is something greater than me that is pushing, that is driving me, that is causing me to be able to grow.
So in the moment, are you consistently thinking through those, because you did a great job explaining, like, how do you mentally prepare for it and think through it, like prior, but when you're in the moment, like, are you replaying those things in your head? Okay.
Yep. I'm replaying those. I'm thinking of the people. I'm thinking of the lessons. I'm thinking of who I am and what I'm doing. And it's weird. In the insanity of running a race like that, there's some sanity, because when you're dead tired and you have nothing else going for you, you have no reason to be out there. Like when you're running a race, it's all voluntary. Nobody cares that I'm out there, right? Like if I were to go home, everyone would understand. And so all there is out there is in that moment, there's only truth. There's just you and who you are, and all the nonsense and distractions gets eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a moment to really get to know yourself that only comes in those moments of extreme fatigue. And you can start to learn who you are and how you rise up and what's at the core. And I actually cherish those moments quite a bit, because they really do help you see sides of yourself you didn't know existed.
Oh, bro, what a fucking battle.
Dude, it's crazy, bro. I want to.
What a fucking battle.
I want to really emphasize this, because this has been really powerful in my life too. One of the things that I've seen is, and I fall victim to this too. Like, I will break a promise to myself way before I break a promise to somebody else. When you're constantly making the goals about you, and I'm doing it for me, and I'm doing it for this. Think about it, man. Like, I will bend over backwards for my mom or one of you guys, family member, coach. If they need something, I'll stop what I'm doing and then I'll go do it. But I struggle sometimes even sticking with commitments to me, dude. You know what I mean? And so if you're still in that, and I spend more time working on this than most people that I know, and I still struggle with it, right? So if you're in that early stage, I think Brock's advice is really, really good. Like, you got to make the why about promises you're keeping to other people. And you said a really good quote about it, and I can't recall it right now, but I thought it was perfect, dude. You got to work on not breaking the promises that you make to somebody else. And I think when you make it about that, and it's always about somebody else, the likelihood that you get to where you want to go increases significantly.
Yeah, and also something that helps. Oh, sorry. On a practical level, what I do with that is I time block. Like, I won't allow certain people into certain times of my life. Like, if you text me from 5 to about 10 a.m., you're not getting a response, most likely. Like, even my wife, because that's time for me to build myself, to read books, to grow, to learn, to educate, and like that's Brock's time. Then I have my business time. So if you're a part of my business, you then can get into my email, my text, and my calls, and I'll answer, right? But then I also have family time, and I don't let those mix. Like, if my mom needs my help while I'm working, she doesn't belong in that time. So that gets eliminated, but she does belong in the night, right? She can use me then. And she knows that. She has that expectation. So a lot of times it's setting proper expectations with my wife, with my kids, with my family, when I'm available and when I'm not. And I time block that. So then I know I have dedicated time.
How important is that first window of time for yourself, and how impactful has that you been? Because I think, going back to the point, I think we always say, I'm doing it for my kids, or I'm doing it for this, but then we never take the time to fill our cup up or charge our battery up. So what does that 5 to 10 window kind of look like for you, and how important is it for people to prioritize that period before they start trying to pour into everybody else?
Yeah. So I want to preface, I am not preaching that this is what your morning should look like.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm on it's part of my job. So it takes a bit more time, but typically this is what it looks like. I'm usually waking up. I'll eat food. I'll start fueling my body for about an hour before, go to the bathroom and, read some books and just start kind of getting myself ready for the day. And it takes about an hour. 6 o'clock, I'm on the trails. Okay. I'm typically running for about 2 hours. Okay. So from 6 to 8, I'm on the trails. Then I come home, I get ready. I spend some time with Kelsey and Summit for a little bit. And then I'm typically spending time then taking offense on my day. So I'm not being reactive to other people, taking calls and things like that. I'm taking offense as far as like, how am I going to grow? How am I going to build? I'm planning. I'm starting to put things in place where I'm on offense. So that can kind of vary. Like I could be posting on social media, making sure that I'm on offense and staying up to date there. So things like that, that's typically where that time comes. And then after 10, then that's where I start. Okay, yeah, I'll start taking calls and emails and things like that, and I'll start getting into the business. And then basically from 6, roughly, sometimes it's later, but that's family time. I'm not taking calls. Like I'm not really focused on myself. Like if my workout didn't get done in the morning, it's not bleeding into family time. Like if it's not, it gets done. And if it doesn't get done, then it's that opportunity was over and I have to make up for that the next day. So, and obviously that's just kind of a quick version of it because it varies, but that's basically a rough draft.
I love that. Jason, I
like
don't know if
that.
you've heard this quote on Founders. Excellence is your ability to endure pain over time and not waver.
Yeah.
And it comes from the guy who started the Four Seasons.
No, really?
Yeah, it comes from the guy who started the Four Seasons. Like your ability to consistently endure pain over time is what excellence comes from.
It is. Can you do the boring shit longer than everybody else, dude? Again, going back to what we were talking about before, the person that can just commit to doing the boring stuff longer over a consistent period of time, they're going to be the ones that find success. And it doesn't need to be all the fancy stuff. It's really kind of the non-glamorous things or the things going back to the small hinges that open up big doors. It's not glamorous. It's in the trenches every single day, man.
I mean, bro, I got to lock in after this one.
That's
Lock,
it. I'm going to go
watching
run.
this.
I'm going to go
Go
run.
fucking
2
lock
miles
in,
around my
bro.
neighborhood after this, dude. I'm ready. I'm so jacked up. I'm ready to go.
So good.
Let's go. I love the trenches.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, bro. Guys, you got anything else? Any other questions?
No, dude, this was great, bro.
Super good.
I love it. Brock, bro, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, just go to my Instagram. We have a link tree on there. You can find out whatever you need to from there. Brock Painter Official. I appreciate you guys having me on. This was an awesome opportunity. You guys are killers. So it was great to learn from you as well and hear your thoughts. I love it.
I love it, bro. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, do not forget your tickets to the Deal Champs Summit in April 4th and 5th. We cannot wait to see you there. Get your tickets at dealchamps.com/summit. We'd love to see you guys there. We have some big lofty goals this year, and I'm trying to spend as much money as possible on the VIP party. So we'd love to have you guys there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Follow Brock, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Peace.